I was kicked out of my house on Christmas Eve by my own mother. She looked me dead in the eye, handed me a garbage bag for my clothes, and said, "You're old enough to figure things out on your own," like I hadn't already been doing that since I was 12. The thing is, I wasn't the addict. I wasn't the criminal. I wasn't even the one who wrecked the car. That would be my brother Brian. But Brian was sensitive. Brian had potential. Brian needed space to grow. Meanwhile, I was the difficult one because I asked why he got a third chance when I never even got a second look. Let me back up. I was born to a white mom and a black dad. Dad left when I was 5. By left, I mean vanished. Mom remarried 3 years later, and suddenly it was a whole new family photo without me in it. Literally. There's a picture from my stepdad's birthday, everyone grinning around the cake, me cropped out so neatly you'd think I was the one holding the camera. My little brother Brian came along after that. Blue eyes, blonde curls, and the center of the damn universe. I was the built-in babysitter, the homework tutor, the punching bag. When he couldn't manage his emotions, Mom would watch him scream at me and then hug him for being expressive. If I so much as sighed too loud, I got sent to my room. By the time I hit high school, I was invisible. Unless someone needed something. Gas money. Sure. Ride to work. Of course. Help covering rent. When Brian lost another job? Naturally. And if I hesitated, I was ungrateful, too emotional. Not what a real family does. I worked 2 jobs in college, got scholarships, graduated summa cum laude. Nobody came to the ceremony. I asked Mom once why she didn't show up. She said, "It didn't feel like something the whole family could celebrate." Brian had just gotten out of rehab for the 3rd time. I guess my diploma made him feel bad. But the real moment, the one that cracked something in me, was my grad school graduation. I was selected to give the speech Full Ride Research Award, invited to speak at a national psychology conference. I was glowing, if I'm being honest. For once in my life, I felt proud. I bought a new dress, paid for Mom's flight, reserved her a hotel room so she wouldn't have to stay in a dorm, picked her up from the airport even after my night shift. And what did she say as we were walking into the auditorium? "Don't stand too close in the photos. The lighting isn't great for darker skin tones." I froze. I thought I'd misheard. Maybe she meant my dress, the lighting. She looked at me calm, even kind, and said, "It'll just be a better picture. Trust me, sweetie." Like she was doing me a favor by asking me to disappear. I stood there holding my speech notes, my mouth dry, wondering if anyone else heard that, but of course nobody did. Because Brian was already inside bragging to some faculty member about how he was thinking of getting into counseling too, as if he hadn't just stolen my debit card a week earlier. When they called my name for the valedictorian address, I walked onto that stage with one thing in mind. Tell the truth. I took a deep breath, looked straight at the crowd and at the front row where my mom sat beside Brian, fiddling with her pearls like the world's most exhausted martyr. "My name is Amina Carter." I began, and I wasn't supposed to be here. Not because I wasn't smart enough, but because some people would rather I shrunk myself than shine too bright. A few polite chuckles. A nervous shuffle in the front row. I was told not to stand close in photos because I might ruin the image, but the only image I've ever tried to ruin is the one that says, "Black girls can't grow up and still stand up." Dead silence. I kept going. I dedicated this degree to the version of me who cried alone on her 16th birthday while her mom took her brother to Disneyland, to the version who paid the gas bill with tip money while being called a freeloader, and to every other dark child told to dim her light. The crowd burst into applause. My mom. She stood up and walked out. Brian followed. I saw the pearl necklace swing as she turned on her heel. When I got back to the hotel that night, my things were in a garbage bag. The hotel room I'd reserved for her cleared out. No note, just a message from my cousin. "Your mom says you humiliated the family. She's cutting ties until you apologize." And that's how I spent Christmas Eve alone in a diner eating reheated turkey while my phone buzzed with silence. That was the lowest I'd ever felt. And it's where everything started to change. The silence after that night wasn't peaceful, it was pointed. No calls, no texts, not even a passive-aggressive meme from my aunt like she used to send when she was worried about me. Just an echoing void. I didn't cry, I didn't chase, I didn't beg to be heard. I just stopped. Stopped answering calls from unknown numbers, stopped checking the family group chat that was hilariously still named the Carters, even though I hadn't been invited to Thanksgiving in 4 years. I changed my number. Deleted them from my favorites, and then I did the thing that really broke them. I lived quietly, unapologetically, without needing anything from them. I took a job out of state, full benefits, my own office, a team that respected me. I rented a small apartment with plants in the window and silence that didn't scream. I decorated it with secondhand furniture and little glass bowls of lavender potpourri. It smelled like peace. But of course, peace is the one thing toxic families can't stand. It started with the guilt trip voicemails. Amina, it's your mother, I raised you. You owe me the decency of a conversation. This family's been through enough. Why would you try to tear it apart with a speech? Brian's having a hard time because of you. You know how sensitive he is? Right, sensitive. The man who once punched a hole in my bedroom wall because I wouldn't give him a ride to a party. The man who called me a waste of brown skin in the middle of a fight, and then cried to Mom about how I was hurting him by holding on to stuff. Every message made my stomach clench, but not for the reasons they hoped. It wasn't guilt. It was rage, dry, silent rage, the kind that grows roots that hardens into resolve. They didn't miss me. They missed the role I played. The fixer, the babysitter, the ATM. The silent shadow who clapped for everyone else's success while quietly making sure the lights stayed on and the fridge stayed full. Without me, the cracks were starting to show. I heard from my cousin Tamika that Brian had gotten evicted from his apartment. Apparently, Mom co-signed the lease because of course she did, and now her credit was shot. Uncle Leon wasn't speaking to her after she asked to borrow money again. She told him she'd already lost one child to stubbornness, as if I had died instead of finally drawing a boundary. Tamika reached out to me quietly, like she was sneaking behind enemy lines. I always saw what they did to you, I just didn't know how bad it was. I didn't respond for days, I didn't know if I could trust her. But then she sent me a screenshot. It was from a Facebook thread where my mom had commented on a photo of Brian with the words, "At least I still have one child who loves me." One child. That broke something all over again. Not because I wanted her love, but because I had given so much of mine for years and watched her treat it like lint to be brushed off a sweater. But that was the moment something shifted. I stopped grieving. Started watching. I pulled up old emails, screenshots, bank transfers, receipts. I tallied every bill I had paid on behalf of that family in the last 10 years. It added up to almost $43,000. Money that could have paid off my student loans, covered a down payment, given me a damn vacation. But instead, it was used to keep the golden child floating while I was told I was just bitter. I wasn't bitter. I was exhausted. And now, I was done. So I did something small. I removed myself from the family group insurance plan. My employer had just bumped me up to a premium package, and I didn't need theirs anymore. I sent an email to HR and CC'd my mother. No warning, no explanation. Just, effective immediately, please remove me as a dependent from this plan. I no longer share a residence or financial ties with the primary account holder. She called me within minutes. I didn't answer. She texted, "Do you have any idea what this does to our deductible?" I replied, yes. That was the last thing I said to her for months. The silence turned radioactive. Mom started messaging my coworkers on LinkedIn, telling them I was going through a breakdown, that I wasn't myself lately, and to please keep an eye on her. HR called me in for a wellness check. I laughed. Then I showed them the messages, explained the situation in exacting professional detail, and my company banned her account. Brian, he texted me once. "Mom's gonna lose it if you don't apologize. Just do it already." I blocked him. Tamika kept reaching out in small ways. A meme, a memory, eventually a voice note. "I'm so sorry I didn't say anything sooner. I think I was scared. But I want you to know you were always the strongest one." We all saw it. Some of us were just too chicken to say it out loud. That cracked something warm inside me I didn't expect. She wasn't perfect, but she was real. And maybe I needed someone real on my side. Because something wasn't adding up. I remembered a conversation years ago. Mom had been drunk, swirling a glass of wine on the porch after Brian's third arrest. She said I had to protect the one who needed it most. I thought she meant Brian. but something about her tone had been off. That night, I dug through an old flash drive I'd forgotten I had. Buried in it was a PDF labeled Dad's Estate, Final. My chest tightened. I clicked, and that's when the unraveling began. The file was exactly 37 pages long. Dad's Estate, Final. I'd saved it during a panic attack in college when I thought I might need documentation to get emergency housing. I remember opening it once, not understanding most of it, then stuffing it onto a flash drive and forgetting it even existed. Until now. I sat in my tiny apartment, legs curled under me on the couch, the screen casting a bluish glow across the walls. I scrolled. At first, it looked standard legal jargon, notary stamps, distribution terms. My father hadn't been in my life since I was 5, but apparently he hadn't completely abandoned me. Because there it was, page 19, beneficiary. Amina Carter, 100% estate recipient. Not my mother, not Brian me. There was even a stipulation funds were to be held in a trust until I turned 25. That had been last year. I scrolled further. The bank account was listed one I'd never seen, a small note said. Contact administrator for disbursement details, transfer upon beneficiary's request. I never requested anything, because I never knew it existed, because someone never told me. My breath caught. I had to set the laptop down. I felt like the walls were moving. I looked back at the document. The executor's name was familiar. Mrs. Kravitz, my old elementary school principal. She'd lived down the street from us, always gave me extra juice boxes when Mom forgot to pack lunch. I found her number online. The first ring made my hand shake. The third, I almost hung up. She answered on the fourth, her voice warm, older now. When I said my name, she went quiet. Amina, oh my God, I've been waiting for this call. She didn't sound surprised. She sounded relieved. She told me everything. After Dad died, he'd left everything savings, a small insurance payout. Even his record collection to me, Mrs. Kravitz had been chosen as a neutral party to oversee the trust until I was of age since he didn't trust my mom. But legally, my mother had been allowed to handle communication while I was still a minor. Except she never gave me anything. Not the letters, not the account info, not even a condolence card. Mrs. Kravitz said she mailed documents called emailed nothing. Eventually, the bank marked the account as inactive and locked the funds. All that was left was my authorization to reopen it and verify my ID. And no, she added, her voice tight, you're not crazy. I suspected your mother was blocking you, but legally my hands were tied unless you asked about it yourself. The next week, I drove to the bank in person. They asked for ID, I gave it. They asked for a signature, I signed. 30 minutes later, I walked out with confirmation that the balance after interest was $86,000. That was mine. That had always been mine. And my mother knew, and she said nothing. While I scraped through college, while I skipped meals to make rent, while I paid Brian's parking tickets and got called selfish for saying I was tired, she knew. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I went home, I brewed tea, and then I opened a spreadsheet. Because it was time. Not for a tantrum. Not for begging. But for reclamation. I started documenting everything. Every payment I'd made. Every time I'd bailed them out. Every lie. Every manipulation. I created 3 folders. Emotional labor. Unpaid. Financial abuse. Verified. Inheritance theft. Legal. It wasn't just for catharsis. It was for court if it came to that. But more than that, it was for me. Tamika was the first person I told. We met at a small cafe, the kind with creaky floors and handmade mugs. She brought banana bread, I brought receipts. When I finished, she just stared at me. That's criminal, she whispered. You know that, right? I know. You should go to a lawyer. I already did. Because yeah, I'd made an appointment. Miss Rivera, family law, sleek glasses, and a sharper brain. She didn't flinch when I told her the story. Instead, she asked, do you want revenge or justice? I blinked. What's the difference? Justice is reclaiming what was taken. Revenge is what you do when they ask for it back. That night, I slept deeply for the first time in months. The next morning, I filed an affidavit requesting access to all communications and transactions made in my name while I was a minor. The court date was set for 6 weeks later. Mom would be notified. I knew she wouldn't take it well. But I was done preparing for her feelings. She didn't prepare for mine. In the meantime, Tamika helped me find an accountant. We built a financial safety net. I paid off half my loans. Donated to a youth center in my dad's name. Bought myself a pair of real leather boots. Not flashy, but mine. And then because I couldn't resist, I mailed Mom a copy of the inheritance document. No note. Just a sticky tab on page 19. I don't know what I expected. A rage call, a fake apology. What I got was worse and better. A Facebook post. I tried to raise her right, but some daughters just want to hurt their own mothers. The comments, half sympathy, half shock. One from Aunt Cheryl. Wait, didn't you say Amina got nothing from him? One from a neighbor. Didn't she pay for Brian's rehab twice? The cracks were showing. I didn't reply. Didn't defend. I just sent everything bank statements, the will emails from Mrs. Kravitz to my lawyer. Miss Rivera smiled when she saw them. This, she said, is going to be fun. The court date was set for 9:00 a.m. on a Thursday. I arrived 10 minutes early, dressed sharp hair, neat, not a trace of emotion on my face. My lawyer, Miss Rivera, met me at the courthouse steps. She gave me a nod that said, "We've got this." And we did. Because I didn't walk in there as a grieving daughter anymore, I walked in as a woman with a paper trail and a damn good case. My mother was late, of course. She always liked to make an entrance. She strolled in wearing pearls and a beige cardigan like she was the aggrieved matriarch in some bad Hallmark movie. Brian slumped behind her hoodie, pulled-up eyes darting like a feral animal caught in daylight. They didn't make eye contact. Not with me. Not with the judge. Not even with each other. The courtroom was small quiet. The kind that amplified every shuffle of paper and throat clear. Miss Rivera stood and stated the facts that I had been named sole beneficiary of my father's estate, that the trust had been managed by a neutral third party, that my mother had knowingly obstructed communication about the funds, effectively committing inheritance interference. My mother's lawyer, some crusty guy who looked like he'd rather be golfing, tried to argue it was a miscommunication, that my mother had been grieving and forgot that I could have asked if I needed help. Miss Rivera didn't flinch. She just pulled out the spreadsheet I had created. Here, she said, flipping pages, is a detailed breakdown of over $43,000 in financial contributions my client made to her family while being gaslit, excluded, and financially manipulated. The judge raised an eyebrow, and then Miss Rivera delivered the final blow. Your Honor, we are also submitting messages from the defendant publicly claiming my client received nothing from her father, despite having access to documents that prove otherwise. We're seeking restitution for withheld assets, plus damages for emotional and financial abuse. The judge called a recess. My mother didn't even look at me. She just sat frozen, one hand gripping her purse like it was a flotation device on a sinking ship. Brian glared, like I was the one who betrayed them. He walked past me on the way out for the recess and muttered, "You think this makes you better than us?" I didn't blink. No, I said I've always been better than this. That was the last thing I ever said to him. Back in court, the judge didn't mince words. He ruled in my favor, ordered my mother to repay the trust's missed interest via her own assets. The estate with interest was reactivated. There would be a separate hearing about damages. My mom gasped, like she couldn't believe there were consequences for once. That night, she posted a selfie on Facebook with a Bible verse and the caption, "Some children turn their backs on the ones who gave them everything." I didn't respond, but I did get a call the next morning from the landlord of her building. Apparently, my mom had listed me as an emergency contact. She'd missed rent again. They were considering eviction. I smiled into my coffee. Sorry, I said I'm not her emergency anything. Click. The fallout didn't come all at once. It unraveled like thread from a sweater. Aunt Cheryl called half whispering, "I didn't know, Amina. I swear to God I didn't know." Uncle Leon sent a PayPal transfer $500 with a note that just said, "I'm sorry." Tamika came over with wine, shaking her head. "Brian told everyone you hacked the will, that the court's wrong, that you're a fraud." I laughed. Then I posted the judge's decision online, public with receipts. Court docs, estate, ledger, bank statements, all of it. No commentary, just truth. The comment section exploded. So she lied for years. And y'all let her pay for everything. Imagine having a daughter like that and throwing her away. Mom deactivated her Facebook within 48 hours. Brian deleted all his posts, then posted one cryptic line. Some people were born to destroy families. And someone replied, yeah, your mother. By the end of the week, the Whisper network had turned on her cousins, who never defended me, started sending me messages like, we always wondered why she treated you that way. Too late. The reckoning was already here. The thing about a truth bomb is when it goes off, no one escapes the blast. A few weeks later, a certified letter arrived at my door. It was from my mother. Inside a single page. I hope you're happy now. You've ruined everything. We have nothing. Brian's in trouble again. I hope you're proud of yourself. I folded it neatly, slid it back into the envelope, tossed it in the trash. I didn't need her guilt. I'd carried enough of it for 2 decades. But the real climax came when I reclaimed the house. My dad's will had included a clause, something I missed the first time. He'd paid for half the down payment on our childhood home. That meant half of the equity was mine. And since my mother hadn't bought him out that house, it was technically partially mine. Miss Rivera smiled when I told her. We can make that happen. We filed. The court ruled. And just like that, the house I'd once been kicked out of on Christmas Eve was partially signed over to me. Mom had 2 choices: buy me out or sell. She couldn't afford either. So she moved into a 1-bedroom rental in the next county. The house went on the market 3 months later. I never stepped foot inside again. Didn't need to, but I did drive by just once. It was a rainy afternoon. The for sale sign had a red sold / across it. The lights were off, the windows dark. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like closure, the kind that doesn't need clapping or headlines. Just the quiet satisfaction of knowing that the truth, my truth, was finally louder than their lies. It's been a year since I sat in that courtroom and watched my mother's face crack beneath the weight of consequences. A full year since I stood up for myself, not with shouting or fists or tears, but with facts, documents, and the terrifying force of quiet boundaries. A year of no contact. Of silence that actually feels like silence. Not the tense, unspoken Cold War I lived through as a kid, but actual quiet. The kind where no one is waiting to unload their mess on you. Where your phone doesn't shake from guilt texts. Where family stops being a battlefield and becomes a concept you can redefine. I didn't plan on being alone at first. I thought I might feel lonely, maybe even regretful. But honestly, I've never felt more whole. Because something happened in the stillness. Something I wasn't expecting. I started hearing myself, the real me. The one who didn't flinch every time someone raised their voice, the one who didn't jump to explain or apologize for simply existing, the one who wasn't the dark child or the dramatic one or the one who ruined the family photo. Just me, and I like her a lot. I used part of the inheritance to pay off my student debt. The rest I invested, slowly, carefully. Miss Rivera connected me with a financial planner who explained everything in simple terms. No condescension, no judgment, no guilt, just numbers, growth possibility. I bought a small condo 2 towns over. Nothing extravagant. But it has light, big windows, a balcony, real hardwood floors. I painted the walls myself. Sage green in the living room. Soft cream in the bedroom. I planted herbs on the balcony. Basil thyme, mint. Every morning, I open the curtains. I water the plants. I play jazz. I drink coffee from a chipped mug I found at a thrift shop, and I let the quiet in. It's funny, I used to think healing would be this loud, triumphant thing like a movie montage, tearful breakthroughs, grand apologies. But for me, healing sounds like a dishwasher humming. Like wind through blinds, like my own voice saying no and meaning it. Tamika visits, sometimes. We've gotten close. She was the first to call me on my birthday this year. She showed up with carrot cake and a candle and said, "This is what real family looks like." I cried, just a little. But this time it felt good. The messages from the rest of them have slowed to a trickle. Every few months, someone tries to guilt me back into the fold. An aunt, a cousin. Even Brian once through a burner account. "Mom's not doing well." "She still loves you, you should call." I didn't answer. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I wanted peace. I finally understood the difference. Forgiveness isn't a door back into the fire. It's a wall you build to keep the flames out so you can heal in peace on the other side. Do I forgive her? I don't know. Some days, yes. Some days I remember every time I begged her to see me and she looked the other way. Every time she told me I was too much when I was just trying to be heard. Every time she called me sensitive for crying after she erased me from my own story. And other days I feel nothing, which weirdly feels like freedom too, because I don't need her anymore. I don't need her validation. I don't need her version of events. I don't need her ghost hovering in every decision I make. She made her choices, and I made mine, and mine led me here. Last week, I gave a speech. Not for a graduation this time, but at a youth mentorship summit, I told them about being the invisible girl, about carrying a family on my back while being called a burden, about finding your voice even if it shakes, even if it cracks a few walls on the way out. I didn't mention names. I didn't have to. The truth isn't about revenge anymore. It's about reclaiming the narrative. After the talk, a girl maybe 17 came up to me. She was quiet, soft-spoken, brown skin curls tucked into a headband. I just wanted to say, "Thank you," she whispered. "My mom always says I'm too dark to be beautiful. I thought maybe she was right, but then I saw you." I hugged her. I didn't say it gets easy, I just said it gets better. Because it does. Slowly, softly. Day by day. You stop flinching. You stop defending. You stop begging for scraps of love that were never going to feed you. And you start living. Truly living. Not in reaction to what they took from you, but in celebration of what they never got to break. I keep a journal now, not the sad kind, the good kind. Full of recipes. I love poems. I scribble at midnight, clippings of things that make me laugh. It's proof that I was here, that I'm still here, that I'm whole. They don't get to rewrite me anymore. They don't get to crop me out. They don't get to decide if I deserve to be seen. I do, and for the first time in my life, I see myself clearly. They say I'm heartless. They say I turned my back on my own blood. They say I should have kept quiet, kept smiling, kept giving until there was nothing left. But I didn't. I chose me. I chose the girl who used to shrink herself in photos. I chose the woman who no longer apologizes for her shade, her voice, her fire. I chose peace. I chose truth. And yes, I chose silence. Not the kind that hides. The kind that heals. So no, I'm not heartless. I just finally put my heart first story too. I am Lena Hart, and this is the tale of how my sister unknowingly promoted me after attempting to disgrace me in front of her boss. The sound of clinking wine glasses and familiar laughter filled the garden. This year's Hart family reunion took place at our parents' Connecticut house and was usually a full-fledged affair. Every table has freshly cut flowers, and there is an ice sculpture in the shape of Hart and Wallace Investments' corporate emblem. In the midst of it all, my twin sister Natalie was holding court. Of course, at the company, Natalie had recently been elevated to the position of Vice President of Strategic Growth, the family's pride, the one who did it all correctly. Her distinctive voice drifted over the jazz band as I grabbed for a flute of champagne. "Here is Lena, my twin sister," she called out to a group of well-dressed coworkers. One of them was a silver-haired man I knew from LinkedIn. James Wallace. She is now juggling a number of activities, including experimenting with businesses. My drink almost suffocated me. Natalie put her hand over my shoulder and drew me in. In her own peculiar way, she is bright. She was constantly thinking about creating applications or whatever it is that IT folks do these days. She gave a charming smile. In the most patronizing way imaginable. It was the type of smile that screams, "Bless her heart." The group gave a courteous laugh. Mr. Wallace nodded curtly at me. "Well, meeting creative people is always beneficial." Natalie grinned as if she had just won something. "Of course we can find her something in the firm if it doesn't work out. Perhaps an assistant position? Everybody begins somewhere." I said nothing at all. I didn't have to, because what did Natalie not know? No one at this reunion was aware that my experimenting had led to my cybersecurity business being recently acquired for $48 million. The deal's ink hadn't yet dry. Ironically, Natalie was now in charge of Hart and Wallace's technology section, which my attorneys and I were still working on to complete the NDA-laden documentation. Yes, her team was ready to implement my program as the new security foundation for their company. She simply wasn't aware of it yet. I grinned as I took a taste of my champagne. Later, let her speak. With proudly heated cheeks, our mother sailed over. According to Natalie, her team has an entry-level position available. You might want to apply. You would benefit from having some structure once more. I made myself chuckle. Yes, structure. Her voice was gentle with fake pity as she said, I know it's been hard for you, sweetheart. But having Natalie is a blessing. She is constantly watching out for you. I saw Natalie across the yard as she threw her head back in exercise and shook her hands. Laughter, always on stage, have to be the favored all the time, holding 2 glasses of red wine. Aunt Celia joined me close to the garden's edge. She doesn't really know, does she? Tell me about who you are now, she requested. I blinked. You are aware. Please, she laughed. You were the main speaker at the Rising Women in Tech conference last month, according to Forbes. When I saw your name, I almost passed out. This time, my laughter was sincere. I understand, she continued, furrowing her brow. I kept your parents in the dark. I assumed you had a motive. I waited until the proper time and nodded. Well, Aunt Celia murmured, her eyes gleaming mischievously. The board announcement next week might be that time. Gazing into my glass, I grinned. At that point, I received an email on my phone from Wallace, the IT director, and the Heart confirming that my system would be fully rolled out the next quarter. Natalie's greatest accomplishment as vice president, and she was still unaware that my name was on it, but she would shortly hiatus. I was not meant to view the letter I got the Monday after the reunion. It arrived in a big envelope that included a board-issued sensitive internal memo that was mistakenly addressed to me with the Heart and Wallace seal. The software CTO offered me was being formalized. To make sure the phrase was perfectly clear, I read it 3 times. Lena Hart is acknowledged by the board as the primary innovation behind the recently purchased cybersecurity system. With effect from Q3, we plan to extend the offer of Chief Technology Officer pending announcement. In startled stillness, I gazed at it. Not because the offer startled me, but because it validated my suspicions. But Natalie didn't know. Following her compelling pitch, my company conducted research, linked the product to me, and determined they needed more than simply my coding. They desired me. Natalie left me a message on my phone the same morning. According to HR, you must complete the necessary papers for the position of junior analyst. Remember to pack a blazer. I almost spilled my coffee. If it weren't so exactly on brand, it would be amusing. I got my laptop open and sent a brief email to the board to express my gratitude for the offer. I haven't yet pushed send before the reality struck Natalie like a brick. I had to see how far she would go. That evening, Aunt Celia called. Have you received it? She inquired. Don't be nice. I understand. I said I have a CTO offer from them. She gave a sharp exhale. I hope you're prepared then. There is no applause for that title. War is a part of it. I grinned. Since we were 5 years old, my sister and I have been at odds. The days that followed went by in slow, surreal motion. I kept getting check-ins from Natalie, just making sure you completed the HR forms. I instructed them to expedite you, CC me on everything. Please, sister. Having you as my protege will look excellent. Protege. I was using the technology. Her whole company was turning around. I saved the texts each time she descended. Then Thursday arrived. At 10:07 a.m., I received the email announcing the company-wide announcement sharp on topic. Lena Hardy unlocked it to greet our new CTO. With words describing my accomplishments, the acquisition, my history, and my vision, my headshot gleamed back at me. My phone exploded. Not from Natalie, from journalists, partners, and board members. Mr. Wallace himself has one message: looking forward to working together to shape H&W's future. However, Natalie radio quiet till 10:41. Like a cyclone, she stormed into my flat. The cheeks turned red. Do you mean me? She let out a cry, knowing what was coming. You allowed me to show you out like a charity case. Calmly, I stood. It looks like you like being in the limelight. How come you didn't tell me? Why would I? I inquired. You expressed your opinion on my career rather clearly. Her voice broke. However, you accepted my offer to work in my department. I didn't recoil. You now work in mine as well. She stopped talking. I displayed the board's memo. I was their choice. I built something real, Nat, not because I'm your sister. She took a firm seat on my couch. I will be ruined by this. For the first time in years, I didn't feel little when I looked at her. I didn't feel like the twin with the screw-up. I felt whole. No, I said softly. If you allow it, this might be the thing that saves you in the end. She didn't answer, but she also didn't leave abruptly, and it was progress for Natalie Hart. It had been years since Lena Hart had felt so lively. As she climbed to the 48th story of the Reeves Tech Tower, the elevator chimed quietly. Her hair was arranged into a neat low bun, and she was wearing a stylish blue pantsuit. Lena had the appearance of the CEO she was growing into. Her name, however, was unknown here. Not quite yet. She was known to the public as Elena Gray, the mysterious cybersecurity prodigy who was just named Reeves Hart Holdings' Chief Technology Officer. The board announcement, which was made privately just that morning, was the outcome of a recent high-profile merger, claimed an NDA-protected acquisition, and signed under her alias. All of this was planned. Furthermore, her older sister, VP of Strategic Growth, Natalie Hart, had failed to see the connection. Not last quarter, when she presented a new security framework. Not when she unwittingly supported Lena's proprietary system as the foundation for the business's technological advancement. Certainly not right now. Lena had seen it all from the shadows. Natalie's polished presentations, her speeches about innovation, and the pride with which she sold a system her sister built from a tiny apartment over 3 exhausting years as she got ready for a joint meeting with the incoming CTO whom she had yet to meet. Lena had first thought about coming out right away. But a week before, over coffee, Dr. Irene had expressed it best. Before she realizes it's you. Let her talk about how brilliant you are. Empathize with her and let her feel proud. Lena waited, observed, and then got up. The skyline could be seen from the floor-to-ceiling windows of her new workplace, minimalist, tidy, sharp, similar to the facilities she had planned. CTO Elena Gray was written on a matte plaque on the entrance inside. Dear Irene was already waiting, smiling smugly from her seat on the guest chair. Lena slipped out of her coat and said, "You're fashionably late for your own arrival. How does it feel too?" With sparkling eyes, Irene inquired. Lena paused, like entering a structure. I now own a portion of the foundation which I was never permitted to enter as a child. Her hand was extended by Dr. Irene. Every brick was earned by you. And this is only the start. At 11 a.m., the staff orientation was planned, sharp. Department heads filed into the meeting room as Lena observed through the one-way glass wall. Natalie was one of them. Today she wore scarlet, self-assured, and strategic. Lena saw her sister's courtship style, which included much laughter and little gestures. It was well-known, almost sentimental, until Natalie stated, "I hope this CTO isn't another tech bro with no social skills," leaning toward a coworker. Lena's eyebrow went up. "I suppose I'll have to let you down. Good morning." As Lena entered the meeting room became quiet. Reeves' Hart logo appeared on each screen. Behind her, the slide said, "Welcome, CTO Gray." With her laptop in hand, she approached the head of the table. Pens poised, seats straightened, a gentle rustling. Slowly, Natalie turned. Not everyone recognized them right away. Confusion flickered, followed by astonishment. Then a sharper object. Lena grinned. "Let me reintroduce myself before we start. My name is Lena Hart. You might not recognize me at all, or you could know me by a different name. However, I am now your Chief Technology Officer." Murmurs, gasps. Natalie stopped. "We recently licensed a product that some of you might also recall." Sentinel X is the security platform that excelled in every audit. I constructed that in my studio apartment using 3 maxed out credit cards and used servers. She took it all in at a family barbecue. Some of you met me as the unemployed little sister. Natalie once offered to mentor me as a tech hobbyist. Lena turned and looked at her sister. As it happens, I didn't require mentoring, I required a chance. Quiet. Not the awkward kind, though. The previous kind. Tectonic movements. The tension was finally released by Natalie's voice. How come you didn't tell me? Would you have paid attention, or would you and your father have laughed it off over dinner? Natalie winced. This has nothing to do with retaliation, Lena added. It has to do with taking back space. We constantly encourage young women to have big dreams, but when they do, even their families occasionally question them. I, therefore, created something on my own terms and stopped waiting for approval. When she pressed the remote, the screen appeared with charts that decreased the chance of a breach, increased the efficiency of the infrastructure, and saved money. I'm not gloating here. I am here to take the lead. The majority of the crew quietly left after the presentation. Look down, I'm racing. Natalie remained. All of that, you built yourself. Lena gave a nod. 3 years, evenings, weekends, all of it. Natalie took a seat in a chair. I referred to you as a sister in between jobs. You're my boss now too? Lena softened her smile. Only if you remain. Stunned, Natalie looked up. After everything you'd wanted, I want a productive team, and when you're not trying to outdo everyone, you're terrific at what you do. Perhaps it's time for us to shine next to one another. In years, for the first time, there was no return for Natalie. Lena let out a breath as she just nodded. Leaving people behind was not the goal of the ascent. She wanted to raise herself, and perhaps just possibly teach others how to do the same. There was a bustle of activity in the boardroom. Lena was standing outside the executive conference room at Hard Investments, which had glass doors, as she fiddled with the collar of her fitted jacket. Her heels made a gentle reverberation against the marble floor. Unaware of the storm, her sister Natalie was sitting behind the door, poised and ready to enter. The CEO and founder Gregory Hart arose and spoke to the executive team. Through the commotion, his deep voice could be heard. For Hart Investments, a new chapter begins today with our impending Reeves Tech acquisition. We are shaping our future, not only obtaining technology. Natalie, who was sat 2 places away from the head of the table, smiled confidently as she leaned forward. This merger had revolved around her. She was prepared to claim full credit for all she had done, including pitching the integration and advocating for the use of the enigmatic security platform that Reeves Tech had purchased, Gregory went on. And now to take the lead in our technical change. I'm pleased to present the combined company's new Chief Technology Officer. He turned to face the door. They opened the double doors. Lena took over. There was complete silence in the room. Natalie's smile stopped. Her face was devoid of color, introducing Lena Rowe. Gregory grinned and said, "Creator of the platform, we're integrating Citadel Protocol. Our new CTO has arrived." It was ruthless quiet, as though experiencing hallucinations. Natalie gazed at Lena. What? At last, she sounded thin as she coughed out. Lena gave a courteous grin. "Hi, everyone." A few executives gave a tentative applause, not knowing if they were seeing a business coup or an unexpected promotion. Natalie's chair scraped the floor as she jerked to her feet. She looked at Gregory and then at Lena and said, "You can't be serious. She isn't eligible for this. This firm is unknown to her." Lena's gaze was unwavering. "I know this company inside and out," she answered quietly. "For years, I've been observing it from the outside, and now I'm doing it from within. Many thanks. What does that signify?" Natalie's voice rose as she asked. Gregory cleared his throat. "Maybe we should all sit down," he spoke aggressively. "Would you please show us your roadmap?" Lena approached the screen. She gave an accurate, thorough, and inspiring presentation. She discussed scalable infrastructure, AI integrations, and cybersecurity as she outlined a 24-month transformation plan. She confidently answered all of the board's questions. Natalie would never have been able to respond to even the most complex technical questions by herself. Natalie sat still. She remained silent until the board members started to whisper and use impressed tones, and the room erupted in applause. At last, Natalie lost her temper. "This is absurd," she gave a hiss. "You caught me off guard. My sister is you. You didn't even tell me either." Lena faced her. "You expressed your opinion of me clearly. The sister who works at several professions. Do you recall the case of the charity?" "It was a joke," Natalie fired back. "No." Lena spoke in a calm but piercing tone. "Whenever you got the chance, you reminded everyone that you were the victor and used it as a weapon in front of your coworkers and our family. And the failure was me." Natalie's face reddened. "What the heck? This is retaliation." Lena gave a headshake. "This is the truth. Additionally, you will need to make the decision to participate or not." Gregory moved forward with an inscrutable expression. "Let the two of you talk." After saying that, he turned to face Lena. "CTO Rowe. Welcome on board." Everyone left the boardroom, leaving the sisters alone. Natalie's tone faltered. "Did you go behind my back?" "No," Lena said. "I proceeded without requiring your consent. Significant difference. You have no idea how this place operates." Lena responded. "I know exactly how things work. Furthermore, I am aware that you would have destroyed my resume before even reading my name if I had shown up with it, rather than a company you were in dire need of." Natalie stopped talking. Lena went on, "You can choose. We can work together to develop something better, or you can continue acting like you're above me and that this isn't happening." After scoffing, Natalie paused. "Do you really believe you can just outrank me?" Lena remarked. "I didn't come in to outrank you. I entered to take the lead. You remain the vice president. You still possess power. That power, however, now rests on your ability to share it." Natalie paced the edges of her normally composed demeanor, showing, Everything is altered by this." "Yes," Lena replied. "Yes, it does." A long pause ensued. "Then why didn't you tell me?" Natalie whispered. Lena gazed at her sister with a sadder expression rather than one of rage. "Since you've long since stopped listening," Natalie sank back in a seat. "I thought I was the only one who could carry the family name forward." "You were never alone," Lena said gently. "You just never looked beside you." For a moment, the two sat in silence, the air thick with all the years between them, the rivalry, the missed chances, the love buried under expectations. Lena stood. "I'll be at the Integration Summit next week. We'll be on stage together. You can choose what role you want to play when that spotlight hits." Natalie didn't answer. Her eyes were locked on the letterhead Lena had left behind on the table. The Reeves Tech acquisition terms, Lena's name signed in full. As Lena walked out of the room, she paused by the door and said without turning around, "This isn't revenge, Natalie. It's restoration. You may either fight it or rise with it." Then she was gone, and for the first time in a long time, Natalie didn't know what to say. 6 months later, the Hart family reunion looked a bit different. Gone were the rows of white linen tables and elaborately posed family pictures. No live jazz trio hired by Natalie this time. No signature drink named after their father's legacy. Just a picnic-style gathering in the yard behind the home with mismatched seats, finger snacks, and a definite sense of something fresh. Sincerity. Lena came early, bearing a dish of baked lemon bars. She wore trousers and a linen shirt, hair pulled up casually the way she used to before tech conferences and boardrooms. Natalie was already there, barefoot on the grass, sleeves pulled up, battling with a recalcitrant folding table. Lena grinned. "You need a hand?" Startled. Natalie looked up, then she let forth a genuine, unadulterated chuckle. "Just as long as you won't criticize me for losing a battle with inanimate objects, it depends." Lena said, "Have you attempted to restart it?" For a long beat, they both laughed while Lena assisted her in setting the table. They simply stood side by side, observing the growing number of guests arriving in the backyard. It wasn't flawless. A couple of awkward greetings, a few distant relatives. I'm still unsure of how to behave around the family genius who was just discovered. However, it felt more genuine than anything they had done in a long time. Last to arrive was Gregory Hart. He walked a bit more slowly now, and Lena saw for the first time the fatigue behind his eyes, not just from age, but from decades of pressure control and the burden of a legacy he had too firmly established. He went up to Lena by himself. "Dad, you look good," Lena spoke quietly. Gregory gave a nod. "You do too." They stood clumsily. Gregory had always found it easier to discuss markets than feelings. "I read the transcript of your keynote." At last he spoke. "The Singaporean one." Lena blinked. "Did you read that? I read them all now," he said. "I've been making progress." She was at a loss for words. "No longer at war?" Gregory turned to face his two daughters and the garden. "Lena, I was mistaken. I didn't simply undervalue you. I let you down." Her throat constricted. He went on, "I kept thinking success had to look a certain way. Organized, secure, predictable. That didn't match you. I thus erred in believing you didn't belong." Lena maintained her gaze steady as they swelled. "I had no desire to fight you. All I wanted was to be noticed." Gregory faced her. "Yes, you are. Not only as a surprise either. Achievement as my daughter." He took a picture of her when she was 12 years old, when she hadn't seen in years, out of his jacket pocket, triumphantly standing next to a project called How Encryption Keeps Secrets at a scientific fair. He said, "I didn't understand this. However, your grandma did. This one was framed by her. After she died, it was in her closet." The shot was taken by Lena. Her youthful face was beaming with happiness, clutching something she loved long before the world told her it wasn't enough. Even though the edges were delicate and the colors were a little faded, Natalie came up behind them. "Dad." Her voice was hesitant as she said, "It won't ignite the grill. I believe you frightened it." Gregory chuckled infrequently. "I'll show it. Who is in charge?" Natalie turned to Lena as he left. "Was he joking?" Lena gave a nod. "That was probably a joke." After letting out a sigh, Natalie gave Lena a Coke. "How is it to be a tech icon, then?" Lena smiled and took the can. Chaotic. Rewarding. In addition to launching a new program for first-generation female entrepreneurs, I have been mentoring a few young women entrepreneurs who, like me, build in quiet. "That's incredible," Natalie remarked earnestly. "HR has been speaking with me. Our recruitment strategy is being revised, reduce the pursuit of pedigrees, and increase atypical employment." For a while, they stood still and drank in silence. Without glancing at her, Natalie continued, "I owe you an apology. For more than simply the reunion. For everything. For each time I attempted to make you smaller in order to feel larger." Lena waited for the words to sink in. "You always had a knack for taking up room. All I had to do was learn. I was permitted to pick mine up." Natalie raised her head. "Do you wish to instruct me in code writing?" Lena's eyebrow went up. "Are you serious?" "I don't guarantee that I'll be proficient at it." "But I'd want to know what you built," Natalie remarked. "Know it well," Lena grinned. "Next, yes. First, let's look at Python." "Don't judge when semicolons are forgotten," Natalie chuckled. "Deal later." Someone proposed taking a group shot as the sun began to set and string lights began to flicker across the yard. Lena was not afraid to stand close to the middle this time. With her arm slung carelessly over her shoulders, Natalie stood beside her. As the camera flashed, Gregory placed a gentle palm on each of their backs. Nobody was acting. Nobody was acting? Only a family present, but imperfect when ridiculous postures were requested by the photographer. Lena's tongue protruded. She was imitated by Natalie. Gregory smiled crookedly, but lifted one eyebrow. Lena then strolled up to the lawn's edge and looked out over the hills that surrounded their childhood home. She was accompanied by Natalie. Have you ever wished we had arrived sooner? Always, Lena said, but perhaps in order to recreate it, we had to break everything. Natalie gave a nod. Do you ever believe we'll regress? Yes, we will. But now we know how to course correct, Lena stated. She gave her sister a glance. Nat, we are no longer competitors. We both co-designed the project. A beat went by in silence. Natalie grinned. Next, let's design the type of home that we would both want to live in. The laughing behind them drew them back in the direction of family, in the direction of forgiveness, in the direction of something that felt like home for the first time in a long time story. I'm 28 years old and my name is Nancy. You would believe I had it all if you were to take a quick peek at my life a few months ago. A diamond engagement ring from one of the wealthiest men in the area, a high-paying position at a $1 billion computer business, a lavish condominium in downtown Austin, and parents who are hailed as industry pioneers. I was envied. They referred to me as fortunate, prosperous, even pampered. However, nobody ever paused to inquire about my happiness. My life wasn't mine, in actuality. It had never been. My parents. Martin and Amanda founded Davenport Enterprises, a tech conglomerate. And I was told I was their legacy, not their daughter, as soon as I could walk. The icy, cunning CEO was my father, Martin. The public face of the business was managed like a stage act by my mother, Amanda, a polished, witty socialite. They did more than simply manage a company together. They planned every aspect of my life, including where I went to school, what I studied, what I did for a living, how I dressed, and who I spent time with. It was all thoughtfully created to uphold and enhance the Davenport name. I wasn't even in charge of my engagement. My parents specifically selected Stephen Langston, the endearing and wealthy heir to Langston Robotics. He was ideal on paper. There was more to the engagement than romance. It was calculated. My parents had discreetly set up a $5 million merger bonus, which would be confirmed after I married Stephen, but I didn't know this until much later. It wasn't a connection to them, it was a purchase. And me, I was only the dotted line signature. What should have been simply another hectic Monday morning turned into the first breach in my perfectly ordered universe. With my shoes tapping on the chilly marble floor, I entered Davenport Enterprises and discovered that the workplace was humming with stress. Workers were clustered in corners, chatting in whispers, phones were ringing constantly, and the boss appeared to have been up all weekend. A significant data breach had occurred. It was evident that someone from the outside had gotten past our firewall and accessed sensitive customer files. My dad was enraged. My mom was embarrassed. It was more than just a security problem. Their carefully manicured image was in danger. They hired a third-party cybersecurity specialist that afternoon to evaluate the harm. I was hoping for someone formal and businesslike. Alex was the unexpected surprise. With a calm assurance, he entered the conference room with a glass wall. No briefcase, no pricey outfit, no phony grin. He was wearing a laptop draped over his shoulder slacks and a crisp button-up shirt. He was different from everyone else in my environment in that he was composed and focused. "Hello," he remarked, grinning genuinely as he shook hands. "My name is Alex. Let's try to sort this mess out." I initially brushed him off. I had been taught to be wary of strangers, particularly those who didn't use business lingo. However, I observed something unusual as the hours went by and we sat side by side, going over the breach. Alex knew more than simply the system. He was human. He gave a clear explanation. They never made fun of me for asking questions, and they even made me laugh for the first time in days with a couple of their jokes. We worked late into the evenings over the following 3 days, and gradually, things changed. We waited in the break room one evening with tepid coffee from the vending machine long after the most of the staff had departed. I found myself discussing the engagement, the pressure, and how everything in my life felt borrowed. Alex paid attention. not with half an eye elsewhere as most people do, but with complete focus. Then he said something I will always remember. He said that life is too short to live for someone else's idea of success. I met his brown eyes. Nancy, you are deserving of happiness. Not only practical. Long after he left that evening and the breach was fixed, his words continued to resonate with me. Every time I glanced at my engagement ring, they reverberated in my mind. All my life, I had been of service. Perhaps, however, it was time to make the decision to be happy. Alex and I stayed in contact after the breach was fixed. A coffee here, a few texts there. He had no agenda and no obligations. Nevertheless, each encounter felt like a breath of fresh air. After years of suffocation, I began to realize how different he was from Stephen, where Stephen spoke of quarterly earnings and growth projections. Alex talked about passion ethics and building things that mattered. But my parents noticed the shift in me. They could sense my hesitation about the engagement, and it didn't take long before their concerns turned into warnings. One night, my father summoned me to his study, a cold, mahogany-lined room that always smelled faintly of leather and silence. He sat behind his massive oak desk, his hands folded neatly in front of him. "Sit," he said firmly, not looking up from the document in front of him. I sat. He closed the folder and looked at me like a man preparing for a business negotiation. "Nancy," he began, "I've noticed you've been distracted. Let me remind you that this engagement isn't just about you, it's about the future of Davenport Enterprises, a future that your mother and I have sacrificed everything to build." He leaned forward slightly. "If you walk away from Stephen now, you'll be walking away from more than a marriage. You'll lose your position at the company, your financial support, your inheritance. Is that what you want?" His voice was cold, transactional, like I was a failed investment. I didn't respond. I couldn't. But inside, something in me cracked as I walked out of his study. My mother was waiting in the hallway. She grabbed my arm tightly, her perfectly manicured nails digging into my skin. "Do you understand what you're doing?" she asked. "We've spent years making sure this merger would happen. You don't get to throw it away for some fleeting crush." I looked at her and saw, maybe for the first time, not a mother, but a woman obsessed with control. That night, I met Alex at our usual quiet diner. I told him everything. The pressure, the threats, the suffocation. He listened just like always. And when I asked him, trembling, "What do I do if walking away means losing everything?" he didn't flinch. He leaned forward, his voice steady. "If everything comes at the cost of your happiness, is it really worth having?" His words hit me hard. And as I sat there staring into my untouched coffee, I realized something. I wasn't afraid of losing what my parents built. I was afraid of never building anything of my own. The day of the engagement party felt like walking toward my own execution. Everything was perfect on the outside. The Davenport mansion was flooded with golden light, polished marble, and the quiet hum of a live string quartet in the foyer. Waitstaff in black and white uniforms floated through the crowd with trays of champagne and orders. Laughter and polite applause echoed in every corner. My mother, Amanda, had spent weeks micromanaging every detail, from the imported orchids to the custom engraved crystal flutes. My father, Martin, worked behind the scenes, shaking hands with investors and key board members, treating the night like a press release in disguise. They weren't celebrating love. They were sealing a deal, and I was the signature. As I stood at the top of the grand staircase wearing the gown my mother had chosen, I felt like a mannequin on display. Stephen stood waiting for me at the bottom, smiling in his tailored tux like he was already posing for Forbes. "You look beautiful, Nancy," he said as I reached him, offering his arm. "Thanks," I replied, voice hollow. As the evening went on, I was paraded around like a trophy. My mother introduced me to old friends, business partners, even a senator's wife. Every time someone toasted to the perfect union, my stomach turned. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. And then it happened. As my father took the microphone to begin the official toast, his voice echoed across the marble hall. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us to celebrate not just a couple, but a future one built on shared vision, strength, and legacy. I heard the words. I felt the room spinning, and suddenly I knew I couldn't go through with it. Not one more second. I took a step forward and raised my voice louder than I'd ever dare to speak in front of them. I can't do this. The room fell silent. Heads turned, champagne flutes froze in midair. I'm calling off the engagement, I said, clearly, my hands shaking. Stephen's grin fell. My parents froze. I witnessed it happen in slow motion. The awareness in their eyes that I wasn't merely breaking up a romance, I was violating the script, and they were going to lose control. The instant the words left my mouth, it was, if I had exploded a bomb in the heart of the room, I could feel the shock radiate through the throng. Some visitors froze mid-set, champagne flutes floating in the air. Others glanced about in disbelief, expecting for someone, anybody, to laugh and explain that this was merely a PR ploy or a stupid joke. But that wasn't a joke. It was the first honest thing I had uttered in years. My mother's face drained of color, her flawlessly done makeup suddenly crumbling beneath the weight of incredulity. Stephen looked like someone had struck the back of his skull. But my father, he moved fast. He raced toward me with such fury in his eyes that I reflexively took a step back. His shoes hit the marble like thunder, and his voice shouted over the astonished hush, "Are you aware of what you just did?" I could blink before he waited for a response, with his palm sharp and loud enough to reverberate across the hall. His hand swept across my open face. Immediately, my cheek was burning. My skin has already developed a flaming red mark. A gasp swept like a wind through the crowd. There was a whisper. He struck her. My heels clicked unevenly on the shiny floor as I stumbled backward. I refrained from crying. I remained silent, stunned. I stood there. Then Amanda lost her temper. She was no longer a cool, collected socialite. Her breathing was quick and her eyes were wild. Her hands were balled into fists as she looked around the room, searching for anything, and I could see her chest heaving beneath her beautiful silk dress. A large wooden music speaker next to the DJ stationed at the room's edge caught her attention. One of the tasteful sound boxes that plays mellow classical music across the hall. With both hands straining under its weight, she rushed over, grabbed it off the low perch, and turned to face me. She said, "You selfish, ungrateful little girl." Then she tossed it. It was a large speaker. It weighed about 40 or 50 pounds and was made of solid wood with internal wiring. She didn't need to, but she didn't raise it high. It crashed at my head with enough power that the right side of my forehead just above my eyebrow was cut by the sharp corner. Instantly, the pain burst. I screamed and staggered back, my eyesight distorted by the force of the collision. Warm blood mixed with perspiration and incredulity as it dripped down my temple. Panic spread like wildfire when the audience let out a cry. "God, oh God, it was thrown at her by her. She's gushing blood." I heard the chair scrape back from the glass smash. Alarming voices rise, followed by a new calm, authoritative voice. Cut like a lifeline through it all. Everyone takes a step back. Officer Scott is who I am. I work as a policeman. Avoid touching the sufferer. A man wearing a black suit emerged from the confusion. I had a dim memory of him from before, a visitor, maybe a member of the family. However, his badge was now in plain sight, and his tone made no room for debate. Despite his composure, he exuded authority by his posture. Without delay, he reached under his coat for a radio and spoke plainly into it. "Officer Scott is here. I require medical assistance and backup at the Davenport right away. A state attack is underway. The victim is hurt, yet conscious. Both parents are suspects." There was commotion in the room. Amanda was on her hands and knees, trembling. Hans Martin remained mute and rigid, a stone-frozen face. All I could sense, however, was the calm clarity seeping into my chest, the warmth of blood on my skin, and the pounding in my brain. I had completed the task. They were exposed by me. Near the entry hall, I sat slouched on a velvet bench that my mother had purchased 3 years prior from a French shop. My blood had now discolored it. I had a cloth napkin in my hand. The cut just over my right brow was bright red, and someone had already passed me. I felt a quick pulse of agony, although it wasn't the worst. My parents' silence was even more painful, not even a shred of worry, not a single step toward me. They had ceased acting since they had hit me. I had too, all around me. Whispers, phone flashes, and mayhem had taken over the majestic auditorium that had served as the backdrop for their flawless performance. Unwilling to align themselves quite yet, guests either scurried away from the spectacle or stood still in groups, uncertain whether to go or stay. Officer Scott, however, remained calm. With one hand resting lightly on my arm, he knelt next to me, his badge still showing. "There will be assistance soon," calmly. "Just stay with me. Now you're safe." I gave a nod, light-headed, yet attentive. When I shifted, the world tipped slightly and my head ached, but I persisted. Within minutes, the huge arched windows were filled with the harsh rise and fall of sirens. The marble flooring were splattered with blue and red lights. An ambulance and 2 police cars arrived at the circular drive of the estate. Paramedics and uniformed cops hurried inside. "Martin made an attempt to stop the cops," he protested with a high voice. "There is a miscommunication here. She is exaggerating." Officer Scott jumped right in. In front of more than 100 guests, her father struck her across the face. She was then struck by her mother using a wooden speaker. I called it in myself after seeing the second assault firsthand. Numerous witnesses and obvious injuries are present. "She's gushing blood. There is no negotiating this." The cops didn't wait for more dispute. Amanda remained on the ground. Her face was expressionless. "Right now." "Stop yelling." No more anger, just silence, as if she knew the story could not be saved any longer. After turning her around and gently dragging her to her feet, an officer cuffed her hands behind her back. As he led her through the stunned crowd, he read her rights and said, "You're under arrest for aggravated assault." Martin was turned to by another officer. "You're also being held for domestic abuse, sir?" Martin's expression remained fixed, not even a flinch. He also consented to be cuffed. In front of the people he had previously ruled, he was too proud to oppose. However, I noticed his jaw tensing. Inside, he was unraveling the only indication I was contacted by the paramedics. Next one knelt next to me and put on gloves while another flicked on a little flashlight and opened a kit. "We're going to investigate." "Okay, gently," the physician remarked. He examined my pupils, cleaned the wound on my forehead, and inquired about my symptoms. Vision, lightheadedness, and nausea. I gave an honest response. He put a new bandage on you and remarked, "You're stable. There are no signs of a concussion and the bleeding is under control. Unless you want a thorough scan at the hospital, we don't have to take you in." I gave a headshake. "I'd want to remain. I want to finish this." As they assisted me in standing up, he gave me a little nod of respect. I glanced at the room's well-known walls and chandeliers. People used to grin at me as if I were a member of the royal family. They looked at me as if I were a stranger now. It didn't bother me. Officer Scott made a last approach. "We will prepare a comprehensive incident report. You ought to speak with a lawyer as well. You have a compelling argument." I inhaled deeply. I didn't feel like a pawn for the first time in years. I was no longer going to remain silent because I felt like a human. "I'm making accusations," I said unequivocally against them both. The headlines were already all over by the next morning. At the high-class engagement event in Davenport, parents attacked tech areas. Arrests followed the terrible violence. Nancy Davenport raises her voice. "I'm making accusations" overnight. Videos from the engagement celebration went viral. Videos of the slap and the speaker being tossed had been captured by guests. My face was covered with blood, even the arrival of the cops. After the video from morning talk programs went viral on Twitter, I received a ton of encouraging notes in my email. Others were surprised, all incredulous. But the peaceful stroll I took into a lawyer's office that morning was more important to me than all of that. Unlike my parents' headquarters, the structure was not ostentatious. It was nestled between two historic cafes in the heart of the city, with a wooden sign that said Miller and Lane Criminal Law and Ivy climbing up the bricks. A headline wasn't necessary for me. I required assistance within Claire Lane, a seasoned trial lawyer with unblinking eyes and a voice that immediately gave you the impression that someone was on your side was presented to me. As I told her about the years of control, the planned engagement, the emotional strain, and ultimately the party violence, she listened intently. She took notes silently, and without interruption, she shut her notepad and glanced up when I was done. Nancy, you're really courageous. Not only was what transpired reprehensible, it was illegal, and that is how we will handle it. We started the legal process of charging Amanda Davenport with aggravated assault with a weapon and Martin Davenport with domestic abuse and public physical violence. Officer Scott's direct witness account, the police report from the site, the paramedics' medical records, and the innumerable guest-recorded films are all gratefully acknowledged. Our proof was flawless. Claire even located 3 well-known visitors who consented to serve as witnesses: a renowned philanthropist, a former judge, and a member of the municipal council. 2 weeks later, the trial got underway. My folks entered a not guilty plea. Naturally, their legal team attempted to fabricate a tale about me, portraying me as emotional, unstable, and unappreciative. However, the boardroom was not the courtroom. This time, they were unable to control the truth. I stood up for myself. I described my experience growing up as a product to the judges. I talked about the stress, the strategic involvement, and the sense of being only a tool for gaining money. I discussed the study's threats and went into great detail about what it was like to be slapped in front of 100 people before being struck by a speaker by the woman who used to call herself my mother. The whole courtroom fell silent as the full, unfiltered film was shown, and I knew we were going to prevail. When Officer Scott, the last witness, came out and corroborated every detail in a cool, collected manner. The judge's decision in the case of the state of Texas versus Amanda and Martin Davenport was given 2 weeks later. Both defendants are found guilty on all charges by this court. Amanda received a 4-year sentence without the possibility of early release from state prison. Martin was sentenced to 18 months in prison for assault and further punishment for trying to obstruct the inquiry. In court, they were handcuffed. Camera crews were not permitted. No lights that flash, pure and simple justice, and I left a courthouse for the first time in my life. Free, not from them. They attempted to force me to do so from the quiet I formerly inhabited. I didn't feel victorious when I woke up the morning after the trial. I felt silent when I woke up. There was no cheering from the crowd. There are no cameras waiting outside. There was just the scent of burnt coffee coming from the kitchen where Alex usually tried and failed to operate the French press correctly, and sunlight coming through a flimsy curtain in the corner of his flat. His hair was a jumble as he peered in with his lips and toothbrush. "Coffee is terrible," he muttered. The edges of his lips were foamy. However, I prepared pancakes, I chuckled. I hadn't laughed that deeply in weeks. I was no longer living in a penthouse. I didn't have a walk-in closet, a personal chef, or a 6-figure inheritance. However, I was at ease. Alex was also with me. That day we strolled across downtown and discussed our future plans. I had no desire to conceal or start afresh. I was unknown. I wanted to start again exactly where everything had gone wrong. After years of advising with businesses, helping them patch vulnerabilities, and educate them how to secure their data before it was too late, Alex had an idea. I had always appreciated his methodical, open, and sometimes rebellious approach to challenges to convention. He said, "You've got the analytics brain. The technical side is mine. Why not construct something from scratch?" It sounded unfeasible. It sounded great, too. We had nothing at first, just a co-working location, 2 laptops, and a shared workspace. A name, too. No safe systems. Simple, Real security was our mantra. Real honesty, real people. Other businesses, meanwhile, concentrated on dazzling AI and unbreakable paywalls. We developed connections. We arrived. We went over each stage of the procedure. We didn't conceal ourselves behind brands or catchphrases. Customers took notice. The first came from a modest nonprofit organization called Word of Mouth, a startup that requires a safe platform. A nearby medical facility was concerned about ransomware. The press followed. This time, it's for innovation rather than drama. Because of our open access transparency reporting policy, we were highlighted in a cybersecurity publication. We are the most human corporation in a code-based sector, according to a tech blogger. And we were falling in love in the midst of all that development, the gradual, steady sort, not the dramatic kind, not the movie scene rush, the type that is designed to arrive at 2 a.m. with pizza and a USB stick. The type where someone answers the phone when you're too frightened to talk and remembers your coffee order. The type in which a two-person quiet doesn't seem empty. It has the sensation of comprehension. On the roof of our building, we celebrated our first significant milestone, signing a big deal with a national logistics company with inexpensive champagne and grocery store cake. I was giggling at something Alex said as I stood there holding a paper plate. Additionally, I didn't feel owned, monitored, or controlled for the first time in my adult life. I was liberated. We continued to work. We continued to expand. Between a business expo and a software deployment, Alex and I looked at one another and decided we didn't want to continue focusing only on growing our firm. Our goal was to create a life. We did not organize a lavish wedding. I didn't want another audience, another platform, or another ceremony that was meant for press releases, rather than promises, after everything I'd left behind. So, we took our own approach. In early spring, on a Saturday morning, just outside of Austin, in the grounds of a little ancient church, Alex and I were encircled by trees, our closest friends and no photographers. The scent of lilacs and fresh dirt filled the air. A gentle wind blew across the lawn. Our vows were written in our own handwriting on mismatched index cards while we held hands. Alex gave me a look as if I were the only person in the world. Nancy, you weren't made to fit anybody else's mold. Oh, he said, voice steady, you were destined to shatter it. And seeing you grow into who you are is the greatest thing I have ever loved. I hardly finished mine without sobbing. With you, I'm useless. I am not a legacy. I'm sufficient. We had a kiss beneath a wooden arch adorned with fairy lights and florals. There were just around 20 attendees, yet they cheered and clapped like there were hundreds. In a way I had never experienced before, my heart was full. We didn't go to Paris or Santorini for our honeymoon. We ate boxed cereal and watched old movies for 3 days in a lakeside cottage without mobile reception. It was flawless. We returned more energized, concentrated, and in unison. But there was still one more surprise in life. After a few weeks, I found myself standing in the restroom gazing at a small white stick that had 2 pink lines on it. I remained silent for a while. I just placed my palm on my stomach and sat down slowly on the tub's edge. A breath caught in the middle of amazement and elation. Alex froze when I eventually informed him. Then he grinned. It's a little quiet smile that conveys the sense that everything has changed. He knelt down and put his palm on my tummy, whispering, "We're having a baby. Me and you. This will be done our way." It wasn't an easy pregnancy. I was constantly exhausted. My back hurt. Commercials made me cry, and I had to gag when I smelled coffee. But there was a silent, constant thrill to go along with every ache. We discussed names. We read blogs on parenting. We decorated the nursery with cozy blankets, soothing music, and books we used to adore as children, and we painted it a light shade of sage. Alex, too. He was a rock. When I had long work nights, he helped me relax. He attended all of his doctor's appointments. He wrote phrases like, "You are literally making a human," on sticky notes that he placed on the refrigerator. You're great. Week by week, we monitored the pregnancy. The 4th month. For the first time, she kicked. Only a flutter. 7th month. Alex constructed the crib himself. The 9th month. With a hand on my round tummy, I stood in the nursery doorway and experienced the most profound calm I had ever experienced. Finally, she showed up at precisely the perfect moment. Nora, our daughter, 7 in elms, 11 Oz, curls that are dark, my nose. The dimples of Alex. I sobbed when they initially put her in my arms because of the weight that was taken off my shoulders at that very instant, as well as the overwhelming affection, the anguish, the shame, and the pressure from generations past. I was the one who halted it. Nora would never have to earn affection as she grew up. She would never be instructed to grin in order to preserve someone's reputation. She would learn as she grew older that her value lay in who she was, not in what she accomplished. There are times when I find myself standing near Nora's crib during the quiet hours of the night. Her little fist is curled up next to her cheek as she sleeps, her eyelashes fluttering on skin that hasn't yet been touched by harshness or expectation, her breathing calm and gentle. The chamber is warmed by the nightlight's brightness. You're already plenty casting gentle shadows on the wall where a wooden plaque says, "It's not for her alone, it's also for me." I used to believe that love had to be earned. The only reason for that accomplishment was obedience. To be useful meant to be strategic, molded, and quiet, that my voice, my dreams, my sentiments, and my distractions were all flawed, a threat to the empire from which I was born. However, the girl is no longer there, and someone I now recognize has taken her place. I'm not Davenport. I'm Nancy. Nora Pawn in someone else's tale? Nora Brand. Only Nancy, a woman who said nothing more while standing in front of her parents. A lady who started from nothing and created something significant. A lady who made the decision to choose love. Romance that sees, encourages, and remains not simply romance. A lady who respected her suffering, carried her history, and created peace. My parents didn't get in touch. Following the sentencing, there were rumors and unsuccessful attempts by attorneys to challenge some vacuous claims. I never answered. I didn't require retribution. I was already victorious. I didn't win by seeing them go down and deciding to advance in a new way. Alex and I kept expanding our business. We've grown, brought on a small staff, and started an outreach initiative to support underrepresented or silenced women in technology. It's among our proudest accomplishments, nonetheless, our proudest feature, with her beloved plush elephant nestled beneath her arm. She is dozing off along the corridor, and I know the cycle ended with me each time I hold her. Nora will never grow up being hesitant to talk. She will never question whether her value is based on how valuable she is. Never will she be viewed as an investment. She will realize what true freedom feels like and what true love looks like as she grows up. And I'll be honest with her when she inquires about our tale one day, not the attractive one. The true story of how I discovered my voice by losing everything. About how I was able to create something greater when I fell apart. About how I broke the script in front of a large crowd. I made the decision to write my own life story, and it saved my life. Please remember to like the video if you were moved by this narrative. For more authentic, impactful tales like this one, subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with your ideas. We are very grateful for your support. I appreciate you watching Story 4. Hi there, I'm 34 years old and go by Olivia. I work as the finance director for a tech business and reside in Denver, Colorado. People frequently believe that I have it all together, a steady job, no children, and sufficient funds for investments or travel. They fail to see how frequently I've been the bank, the fixer, and the assistants in my family. However, I never thought that the individuals I continued to stand by would turn out to be the ones who betrayed me so severely. One beautiful weekend in late April was the beginning of it all. In San Diego, my younger brother Liam was getting married. The event was placed on a gorgeous beach. Twinkle lights stretched over palm trees, white linen seats, gentle waves, and a soft blue sky. Visitors danced barefoot on the sand, laughed, and posed for pictures. You'd never know I had provided the majority of the funding for the entire setup. My parents were retired and on limited incomes, and Liam and his fiancée had recently paid off their college debts. So without hesitation, I jumped in. I covered the cost of the flowers, the meals, the venue, deposit, and even the photographs. Liam and his new bride were commended by everybody for organizing such a beautiful wedding. My name is not mentioned. It didn't bother me. I told myself I didn't. However, it was after all. Family. Ryan, my boyfriend, flew from Denver to join me even though we hadn't formally planned to be married yet. We both understood where we were going after 2 years of dating. He witnessed my generosity toward my family and, more significantly, my lack of reciprocation. He never pushed, though. He gave me the freedom to realize things on my own time the night before the wedding. Following the last dance, I stood at the venue's edge, feeling the ocean wind caress my skin as I held my sandals. "Thanks for everything, Liv," Liam murmured, giving me a hard embrace. "You truly delivered?" I clasped his hand and grinned, but I felt a slight pang at the back of my chest. It had nothing to do with gratitude. Being noticed was the goal. Ryan and I went back to the motel that evening. We were so happy that we fell asleep in one another's arms after discussing the wedding and laughing about the aunt who sobbed too much during the vows. While I was falling asleep, I was unaware that a terrible event was already happening, something that would completely alter the situation. Ryan and I were checking out of the motel early the next morning. I was looking through my phone to get the hotel reservation after tossing my duffel bag over my shoulder when I made the decision to launch my banking app. Before leaving for the airport, a brief inspection. My throat tightened and my fingers became rigid at what I saw. There has been a significant decline in my account balance. It was $19,000 lower. In the midst of the hotel lobby, I froze, carts sliding across tile floors, people sweeping past me, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee. It all went away. Unable to blink, my eyes were fixed on the screen. "What is it?" Wheeling our bags behind me, Ryan asked. I took a while to respond. My lips were parched. I murmured, nearly whispering, "Ryan, the 19,000 is gone." He grabbed my phone out of my grasp and began looking through the transaction history. "Have you lately made any significant transfers?" We both knew the answer when he asked. I had more than $28,000 in my checking account only last week. Since then, I had not made any significant purchases. He scrolled through the past, and I watched. He clenched his jaw. He tilted the screen and said, "Here, take a look." 3 changes. Last night, everything was finished in a single minute. Jenna Collins received $6,000, $7,000 to Scott Collins. Marcia Green was paid $6,000. They were all recorded as Zelle transfers at 10:47 p.m. I gasped. I answered slowly. I was in the shower at that time. Following the ceremony, Ryan turned to face me with a solemn gaze. "I take it you didn't mail these." "No, not at all." "Then," he added bluntly, "someone used your phone. Both your password and your app were accessible to them." As soon as we entered the elevator, my legs began to wobble. I tried to quiet the noise in my ears by leaning against the mirrored wall. I had always been the assist, sending money without asking, paying the bills, and purchasing the last-minute airline tickets. However, it didn't help. It was stealing. Worst of all, I already knew who was responsible. My phone rang as soon as we entered the hotel foyer. Her mother was the one I responded after taking a deep breath. I tried not to tremble when I said, "Mom, I have a question for you," as if she were in the kitchen with someone else. There was a lull on the other end of the line, followed by distant talk and the sound of clinking dishes. Her voice was informal, even upbeat. "Good morning, my love. Is everything all right?" Last night, 3 sizable transactions were made to my bank account, which I swallowed. "To you, Scott and Jenna. Are you familiar with that?" She really giggled after another pause, as if I had just recalled her of something funny. Oh, that I wanted to know when you would notice. To be honest, it wasn't as much as I had anticipated. My heart stopped beating. What are you saying? According to Jenna, keeping so much in your account was wasteful. Breezily, she remarked, so we divided it. Consider it Liam's wedding present. I was immobile as I stood still in the hotel lobby. Nothing caught their attention. I had ringing in my ears. While I was taking a shower, you stole my phone. My voice cracked as I asked, Oh, Olivia, don't be so dramatic. You're not dating doing well. No children. You ought to lend a hand. That's the role of family. Ryan moved in closer and removed the phone from my grasp calmly but firmly. He said, Ma'am, you just acknowledged committing a crime. It is theft to take money out of someone else's account without their consent. She lost her temper. Do you enjoy interfering in family affairs, or are you now a lawyer? I reclaimed the phone. I said, Mom, in a softer tone. Who sent those transfers after stealing my phone? Jenna, without embarrassment, she answered. She guessed her password. It wasn't hard. Something about your old cat, right? And then she hung up. I stared at the blank screen in disbelief. The woman who had raised me had just laughed in my face after helping herself to my life savings. It wasn't just betrayal. It was bold, unapologetic theft from the people I had trusted the most. Ryan took my hand gently but firmly. We're not letting this go. And neither was I. We didn't even stop to breathe after the call ended. I told Ryan I wanted to speak to them in person. I needed to see their faces when I asked them why he didn't question me. He just nodded and drove us to my mother's house. The drive through the San Diego suburbs felt surreal. The sun was out, birds chirped, and the sky was the same soft blue from the wedding. But I felt nothing. It was like I had been scooped out from the inside before we could ring the bell. The door opened. Jenna stood there in a tank top and yoga pants holding a coffee mug. She gave me a half smile like I was early for brunch. Oh, Olivia, you came back. I walked right past her inside. My mother, Marcia, was sitting in the living room sorting through Liam's wedding photos. Scott, Jenna's husband, had his feet on the coffee table sipping espresso, like it was Sunday morning and nothing had happened. We need to talk, I said, standing firm in the center of the room. Marcia looked up calmly about the money. Yes, I said, my voice sharp. I want to know who gave you the right to go into my bank account and take $19,000. Jenna shrugged and plopped onto the couch. You should have used a better password. Mr. Whiskers was too easy. She laughed like it was a joke. Scott chuckled. I told her not to do it, but she said you wouldn't care. You think I wouldn't care? My fists clenched. My voice was rising. You took $19,000 from me while I was in the shower. You didn't ask. You didn't even hint. You just helped yourselves. Marcia stood slowly, setting down the photo album. Olivia, don't blow this out of proportion. It was for Liam's wedding. You're not dating. You make good money. Liam. Starting a new life. Families help each other. Helping means I agreed to it. I snapped, what you did was theft. Jenna rolled her eyes. We didn't ask because you always act generous but never really give. We're tired of begging, Scott added with a smirk. You still have $9,000 left. We didn't clean you out. That was it. My voice dropped to a cold whisper. You didn't just take my money. You stole my trust. The room fell silent. Then Marcia's face twisted. How dare you speak to me like that? She shouted, and before I could react, she raised her hand and slapped me across the face. The sound rang through the room like thunder. Ryan was on his feet in an instant, grabbing my arm and stepping in front of me. Enough, he snarled, turning toward Marcia. Touch her again, and you'll deal with the cops. I stood there, my cheek burning, my heart pumping, my head blank. That smack didn't simply hurt my skin. It broke any notion I had left of this being a misunderstanding. It wasn't. They understood exactly what they were doing. I looked around at the three of them. Now it's not only that I added, it's assault. And I turned and went out the door this time without looking back. We drove back to the motel in quiet. I clutched Ryan's hand the entire time, but I couldn't talk. My cheeks still ached from the slap. But what stung more was the icy certainty creeping inside me. This wasn't a moment of crazy. I had never wanted to acknowledge this trend. I was worn out beyond repair. By the time we touched down in Denver that night, I refrained from unpacking. I neglected to check my email. My thoughts were racing as I sat on the couch and gazed at the floor. I opened my laptop the following afternoon and started retrieving bank statements. I wanted evidence, but I convinced myself it was simply curiosity. Evidence that I wasn't thinking this, that the awful night wasn't unique. One bad decision made by Marcia or Jenna. I had to confront the reality that I had been evading for years. I began underlining each financial transaction pertaining to my family after printing out my statements. For Jenna and Scott red. For Marcia, blue, Liam is represented by yellow line by line, month after month. The pile of papers on my dining table soon became substantial. I've transferred just over $42,000, $40 over the last 3 years, which includes $2,000 for rent, tuition assistance, vehicle repairs, medical crises, birthday parties, Christmas gifts, roof leaks, and missing phones, till payday. Only this once. There was never a single instance. Each time I paused, guilt was placed on top like icing. We are related, Olivia. You're doing well. You're not having any difficulties. You have no children at all. You don't really need the money. They had convinced me. I believed I was being responsible, kind, and encouraging. I hadn't been helpful, though. I had been giving in. Jenna contacted me, crying at the time, claiming that her daughter Madison had broken her arm and they were unable to pay for it. In the midst of my workday, I sent $1,500. I later discovered that everything was covered by insurance. Jenna had utilized the funds to make a down payment on Scott's new iPhone. While I marked another transaction, Ryan took a seat next to me. Have you have any food today? I gave a head shake. I'm not hungry. Take a look at this. I've been treated like an ATM by them. I couldn't see it since I'm blind. He removed one of the pages from my grasp with gentleness. You weren't blind. You made an effort to adore them. I didn't respond. I was unable to. Then he inquired in a low voice. Have you considered doing something? I paused. I answered slowly. If a stranger had taken $19,000 out of my account, I would file a report. He gave a nod. Why not right now, then? My palm clenched around the highlighter as I gazed at the pages. Why not? Yes. I sat in front of my laptop the following morning and gazed at the document I had named The Truth. It included all of the money I had donated to my family over the previous 3 years together with the dates, amounts, screenshots, and text exchanges. It was less like a family history and more like a criminal report. Beside me, Ryan set down a cup of tea. He whispered softly. You don't have to do this today. I said, yes, I do. I will never take a stance if I don't do so now. Without another word, he nodded. I gave a former co-worker of mine who was now employed at a law firm that focused on financial matters a call. She put me in touch with Tina Hargrove, an experienced officer in the Family Financial Crimes Unit at the Colorado Office for Financial Crimes. Olivia Brooks. Miss. Later that afternoon, when I got to the workplace, Tina asked. She was calm in her 40s with piercing, observant eyes that were framed by no-nonsense glasses. Yes, I do need to report anything. It seems to me that family members are engaging in financial exploitation. Calmly, she remarked. Let's sit down? I spent about an hour explaining everything to her. The $19,000 moves from my phone to Liam's wedding, the smack. Then came the years of guilt-tainted manipulation and unpaid loans. Tina took notes without speaking, only stopping to pose direct, focused queries. Finally, she inquired, Have you got proof? Ryan handed over the folder we had brought after opening it bank records. Logs are transferred. Text screenshots, audio recording of the altercation at Marcia Green's residence. Tina turned the file over. Her eyes narrowed a little, but her face remained the same. "It's not unusual," she said. "It's rare to hear someone actually speak up." I gave a nod. I believed for a long time that the peaceful course of action was to remain silent. However, if you are the only one experiencing pain, it is not peace. She returned the nod. "We'll start a preliminary inquiry. We are going to check the transactions, obtain digital logs, monitor the IP addresses used for the transfers, and speak with the participants. We will forward any evidence of unlawful access and intent to the district attorney." I paused. "Are they going to be taken into custody?" "It depends," Tina answered. "Yes, if intent is established and the case proceeds. However, there will be legal repercussions in either case." Ryan grabbed my hand as we got up to go. I was trembling a little, but not because I was afraid. Not against strangers, but against my own kin. I had just begun a legal war. However, I felt no remorse. I felt prepared. The word quickly got around. I was still throwing in bed when I received the first message early the next morning. Crimson eyes after a restless night. "Marcia, Mom, Olivia. What are you doing? Did you actually report this? Call me immediately." 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed incessantly. Text after text from Jenna Scott and even a couple from Liam, but his tone was tentative, apprehensive. But Jenna and Scott. Their words were poisonous. "Jenna, are you out of your mind? You're attempting to send your whole family to jail over a few $1,000. You're really self-centered. Scott Madison's life is being ruined by you. The children don't matter to you. I reared you, Marcia. And now you're betraying your own family. You're heartless." I silently gazed at my phone. The word sorry did not appear in any of the messages, not a single acknowledgement of their actions. Only guilt-anger charges. Ryan entered the room with 2 coffee mugs in his hands. He lit up in my hand as he glanced at the television. I nodded. "Still blaming you. I feel as though I have betrayed them." He removed the phone from my hand and sat next to me. "Olivia, you didn't betray them. You were betrayed by them. They're not upset with you because of your wrongdoing. They're upset because you refused to be used by them for the first time." Nothing struck as deeply as that I recalled how fast they twisted and how many times I had hesitated before delivering money. "Family is meant to assist. You're not having any difficulties. Why are you so self-centered then? If it wasn't vital, we wouldn't inquire." However, it never happened once. Furthermore, it was never reimbursed. My phone called once more that afternoon. Something told me I had to confront it, even though I almost let it go to voicemail. I replied. Marcia's tone was piercing. Her voice was angry. "Olivia, you have let me down. When people learn that you are taking your family to court, what will they think? Your own blood is being humiliated." I shut my eyes. I could still feel the burn of her palm on my cheeks. "You stole my money, Mom, without my consent. You gave me a smack. You're behaving as though that's typical. You've had enough." She let out a bark. "You have no children at all. You didn't care about that money." I spoke steadily. "Nobody is entitled to take simply due to their assumption that I can afford it. You didn't inquire. You took something that smack too. It was assault." She cautioned, "You're forcing yourself out of this family. If you find yourself alone, don't blame me." I inhaled deeply. When the line was crossed, everyone made their decision. Finally, I'm sketching it. The line died. There was uneasy stillness for 3 days. Then one gloomy day, my Denver apartment's windows were stained by light rain. The doorbell rang. Ryan raised his head from his computer. "Did you have any expectations?" I went to respond to it after shaking my head. I recognized the person standing on the porch through the glass, crammed hands into jacket pockets, hunched shoulders staring at the ground. "Liam," I carefully opened the door. "Hello, uncertain of what to anticipate," I said. His expression was a combination of regret and shame as he glanced up. "May I enter?" "Only for a few of minutes." After a moment of hesitation, I moved aside. We sat at the dining table where thick, color-coded tiles still held my financial records. Liam gave them a quick look but held his tongue. Between us, the air seemed thick. "Are you doing all right?" Gently, he inquired. "I'm making it," flatly, I replied. "You're aware of what's happening," he gave a nod. "Yes, I do. I finally understand everything. I simply had no idea what to do." "Liam, why are you here?" I folded my arms and asked. He inhaled deeply. "Because I have to be honest with you. I was unaware that your phone would be taken that evening. I didn't ask them to. However, I have witnessed it occur before." I squinted. "What are you saying?" "Last year, I heard Jenna and Scott discussing ways to borrow from you without causing you any trouble. I noticed my mother making a list, back to school birthdays, holidays, and deciding what to ask for and when. And I said nothing. I did not want to get expelled. I recently became a parent. I felt afraid. I remained silent. I was too shocked. Liam's eyes were sparkling as he glanced up at me. "However, Mom ordered me to keep quiet when you filed a report. She advised me to claim ignorance if I were summoned to court. Olivia, I can't do that. Not to you no more." My vision was obscured by tears. "Do you intend to testify?" He gave a nod. "I'll share all I know with the court. I'll explain that it wasn't a coincidence, it was pre-arranged. Additionally, it has been going on for years." I grabbed his hand from the other side of the table. "Are you certain this implies that they will also turn against you?" "You know, I understand," Liam answered. "However, truth is what I would pick if I had to choose." "You are my choice." On a soggy Monday morning, the preliminary hearing was set to take place in the Jefferson County Courthouse. I was driven there in quiet by Ryan. I clutched a folder containing printouts, proof, and agony as I sat in the passenger seat. My heart felt like it would burst when we walked into the courtroom. Jenna and Scott, who were wearing business casual, sat rigidly across the aisle with expressionless faces. They refused to look at me. Marcia, my mother, wasn't present. In order to conveniently escape taking responsibility for her actions, she had filed a legal excuse claiming that she was ill. However, Liam was present. He took a seat next to me, stable yet stiff shoulders. For a moment, I touched his knee. He breathed gently as he nodded. The judge came in. In her 60s, the Honorable Judge Nora Higgins was a perceptive woman with short gray hair and an attention-grabbing manner. The courtroom became silent as she said preliminary evidence in case number 8826B is being heard today. The accusations include 1 count of violent assault, asset theft, and improper access to a personal bank account. The final portion was for the smack. Indeed, everything was set forth by the prosecution, the unlawful access via my stolen phone and the financial transfers, voice memos, screenshots, statements, and years of unpaid money. Liam's time came next. He approached the witness box at a leisurely pace. His voice was steady, yet his outfit was a little crumpled. He remarked, "At first, I didn't want to believe what was happening. However, I did see it. Olivia, my sister, was being exploited rather than assisted, utilized." He claimed to have overheard Scott and Jenna discussing how to approach people for money without raising suspicions. He mentioned our mother's financial asset calendar. He also acknowledged that he was aware that Jenna had figured out my password years prior. She boasted about it several times. He then gave the judge a direct look and stated something that will always stick in my memory. I was afraid, so I said nothing. But I'm over my fear. Money wasn't the only factor here. They gained her trust and never expressed regret. They simply had higher expectations. There was silence in the room. Judge Higgins silently observed him while tapping her pen on her folder. "Squeeze my hand, Ryan." I stood next to Liam in the corridor after the hearing was over. "Are you all right?" He gave a nod. "Today I lost them." "No, you still have me," I muttered, meeting his gaze, and I'm proud of you for the first time in my life. I went back to the Jefferson County Courthouse for the final decision a week later. I walked through the courthouse doors holding Ryan's hand while wearing a plain blue dress. Scott and Jenna were already sat inside, their body language tight, but their faces blank. Once again, Marcia was nowhere to be found. It should come as no surprise when Judge Nora Higgins arrived in the courtroom and immediately got to work. The court has examined every piece of evidence that was presented: unauthorized bank transactions, text message records, Mr. Liam Brooks' witness statements, and the audio recording made at the defendant's home. Marcia Green's physical attack during the altercation is one example of this. I took a deep breath. The smack had not been forgotten, even without Marcia Justice's memory, was longer than my family anticipated. The defendants, Jenna Collins and Scott Collins, are found guilty by the court of unlawfully accessing and stealing $19,000 worth of personal property. The plaintiff's bodily ailments and mental distress are also acknowledged by the court. Judge Higgins resumed one after adjusting her spectacles. Jenna and Scott Collins have been placed on supervised probation for 3 years. They have 90 days to pay back Miss Olivia Brooks the entire $19,000. 3. Miss Marcia Green receives an extra $6,000 in emotional damages. Despite being absent, he was fined $2,000 and found guilty of violent assault. In addition, she receives a 6-month suspended prison sentence and obligatory anger management therapy. 5. All 3 are the subject of a 5-year restraining order. By every means, Jenna, Scott, and Marcia are avoiding communication with Olivia Brooks. 6. The defendants are responsible for paying all court fees. There was silence in the room. Jenna's face went pallid as a ghost. Their lawyer turned his head away as Scott said something to him. I was paralyzed by the odd, silent weight of justice finally sinking in. Not by terror. Liam put his hand on my shoulder. You succeeded. Ryan leaned closer. You did more than simply safeguard your finances. You kept your peace. I carefully rose up, taking one last look around the courtroom. I felt like the accused when I first arrived here. Not sure, sentimental torn. Now, however, I held my head high. My family was broken by me. They broke themselves. I just decided to stop being a quiet victim. When we left the courthouse, I hardly noticed that the steps were slippery from the melting rain. Now the world felt altered. It's not softer, clearer, but not easier. I sat on the couch the same evening wrapped in a blanket, and I stared at my phone, which was muted. Since the verdict, I hadn't switched it on, but curiosity finally got the better of me. I woke it up to a fresh text from an unknown number, hundreds of missed calls, and a few voicemails. Do you believe you have won? We will not bow down. I didn't have to see where it came from. Without hesitation, I erased it. 3 weeks went by without incident. After the court documents were detected in his employer's background check, Scott was fired, a court ruling frozen, Jenna and Scott's joint accounts, then their home was put into foreclosure. Liam sent me a text. I wanted to let you know that they failed to make 2 mortgage payments. Madison's enrollment was canceled by her school because of her late tuition. They're disintegrating. Calmly, I read it. No retribution, no satisfaction, just the facts. Getting caught up, I didn't recognize the woman who left me a voicemail a few days later. Hello, I'm Teresa. On the forum, I read your essay. For 30 years, I have been providing for my daughter financially. I used to believe that I was simply being a good mother. I became aware that I wasn't being kind after reading your tale. They were controlling me. Thank you. I hit play once more. Tears are streaming down my face. I felt less alone for the first time in years. There were more messages, emails from unidentified people, ladies' men, even a writer's guy. Thank you, Olivia. I ultimately quit donating $500 a month to my unemployed brother because of you. I feel free at last, even if he labeled me callous. Every message lessened the burden I had been bearing for so long. Ryan, meantime, became my silent rock. I never felt compelled to forgive him. He never attempted to ease my suffering. He simply remained. I was watering our balcony's small herb garden one evening. He carried a little navy blue velvet box and 2 glasses of red wine outdoors. He remained silent. He said, "I thought I'd wait. But then I understood that you are the one person I want to spend the rest of my life with." A plain platinum ring with a solitary diamond was within. It was not ostentatious. It was not ostentatious. It was flawless. "Yes," I muttered. That year spring arrived slowly. Mornings were gentle and blossoming as the snow melted. And on one of those days near Seward Lake, beneath a canopy of cherry blossoms, I headed toward the man who never left my side down a plain white road bordered with flowers. In a little ceremony, Ryan and I were married. No big guest list, no dazzling lights, only those who were important. The mother of Liam Ryan. When my own family failed to support me, Helen, his sister Maya, and a few close friends did. As if to bless us, the sun streamed through the trees. Liam's voice quivered as he approached to speak. At one point, I kept quiet out of fear of losing my family. However, I learned from my sister Olivia that true family does not instill fear. They don't exploit your generosity, they guard it. He held his glass out to me. "You have my admiration. It is a privilege for me to be your brother." My cheeks started to water, but not from suffering, but from recovery. I saw something significant as I looked around. I had not lost any relatives, I had just created room for people who loved me and let go of those who never did. I was drinking tea and looking at our wedding photo by the window when we got home that evening. In my own eyes, I noticed something I hadn't seen in a while, and Ryan's grin in the picture seemed like the gentlest promise. Calm. I wrote my first piece for a community psychology magazine later that month. I Set Boundaries and I'm Not Sorry was the title. Thousands read it in a few of days. Others emailed while others left comments. One statement was repeated repeatedly as several people sobbed. "Thank you. You are the reason I finally said no. I didn't write this to embarrass anyone. I wrote for those who, like me, had mistaken love for sacrifice and were brought up to think that devotion meant remaining mute in the face of brokenness. I had been described as uncaring, egotistical, and frigid by the folks I used to donate my last money to, not by strangers, and I finally got it now. Being kind means not allowing others to harm you. Family is not a justification for cruelty, and love is not a kind of financial servitude. Nothing was destroyed by me. I just sketched the boundary, and life brought me to individuals who appreciated who I was. Once I finally let go of those who just appreciated what I had to offer. Maya, Helen, Liam, and Ryan. The people that messaged me were strangers. The readers who identified with what I wrote, I had finally matured into a woman who recognized her value, replacing the little girl inside of me who was constantly seeking acceptance. And I'll smile and respond. I didn't just survive. If someone asks me what I learned from all of this today, I took back my name and made the unapologetic decision to choose peace. Please remember to like the video if this tale resonated with you or brought up memories of something personal. Leave a comment below and subscribe to receive weekly updates on more inspiring true life tales. We are able to elevate more voices